Hello all heroes and welcome back to Invincible Guarding the Globe, and today I want to talk rare characters. Now what do I mean by rare characters? Well, what I mean by rare characters is everybody ranked down here, ranked as blue characters, aka rare, aka why do mobile games always use rare when the character is blatantly not rare? I mean, seriously. I mean, shoot, even the freaking these are guys are, you go from common to rare. I mean, what the heck? But anyways, rare characters are very often considered to be fodder characters. And this is not unusual depending on the game. AFK Arena in particular has quite a lot of fodder characters. DK has characters that you don't even use to build your Nikes. They just get immediately chummed into resources. So it's not unusual to have fodder characters. What is unusual is that you can do this. You can completely build a rare character just as good as you can an elite character. In spite of the fact that they start at a lower level and they only have 3 skills, you can take them to Omnipotent Plus and beyond. In theory, they have if there is a level cap, and I'm not so sure there is, they have the same level cap that an elite character would have. Now, why do I care? Other than the fact that long ago I built Dupli-kate for giggles and then I was betrayed because at first this said 75% of her stats, but then that was apparently a bug, and that was a whole thing that was far from my finest moment. But why am I talking about them? Well, the GDA case files are a recent and highly successful mode that was released. And among the veterans that were released of Invincible and Green Ghost, with Battle Beast coming a little bit later, there was Rexlode. Rexlode got a case file, just like anybody else. And if I really wanted to, I could even keep it going, but that's not the point of the video right now. He has a case file. It is pared down a little bit. It only goes to 40 as opposed to 60 of everybody else. But it still gives loot, it still gives gems, and it still gives comic book pages. Which means there is now an actual reason to build rare characters. Before, you could kind of do it for giggles. If you really wanted to Rexlode or you praise the almighty fish. Now, before it was just for giggles. Now, there's a reason. A dang good reason, no less. I have a feeling these comic book pages are going to be important. So with that, we have to consider value. Because, admittedly, there are a lot of rare characters that are not good value to build, and we have to assume that each of them will sooner or later get a case file. So with that, I want to pose the question. Do rare characters deserve a rework or a buff, and which ones could benefit the most from it? Well, first of all, to that first question, do they deserve a rework? Yeah, absolutely they do. Because they can get up to just as high levels as any elite character, and, first you the case files, they are going to be needed, sooner or later. Rexlode is needed, and I can only assume that everybody else will be as well. Plus, they did introduce the rare characters of Oliver and Multiball as new characters. So they have shown that they're not afraid to release new rare characters in addition to the typical elites. So, I want to highlight a few specific characters that I think deserve a rework. And the first one I'm going to say is Dupli-kate. Now, I'm going to be totally honest, this is a little bit of cope because I built Dupli-kate long ago when her skill said her copy was 75% of her stats, when it turns out it was only 25%. That typo hurt me a little bit. And then I accidentally made another Dupli-kate, but I could have reset her when they released the reset, and then I didn't because I was in too deep and I wanted to commit to the bit. Regardless, I have 2 Dupli-kates. And man, I think she deserves a rework. Because here's the thing. It's not like she's even bad. She has potential. Her strength in numbers has a butt-kicking 3.5 stun, A pretty respectable 15-second cooldown, all at level 1. And if you do give it a little bit of love, she actually can receive a small, but, you know, better than nothing shield. So already we're off to a dang good start. This is surprisingly good because enemies targeting Guardians of the Globe allies receive 5% extra damage from Dupli-kate and her copies. This is basically just a free way for her to get more damage if an enemy is attacking her or attacking a fellow Guardian of the Globe. I mean, just raw extra damage. Not a bad ability when you really think about it. And then this, I love summon abilities, and if this was more than 45%, this ability right here could be broken. Alas, though, it was not 75%, it was only 25%, but that does not stop me from considering wanting to build it up. Because not only do you get the other Dupli-kate that can attack just like her, but it can also draw some aggro, which is not the worst thing. So, if we were to give a rework, and here's how I'm going to define rare character reworks. We're going to say a rare character rework is basically just giving them a 4th skill. I'm not going to necessarily say that they should rework existing skills, because, I mean, I get it, they're not meant to be as good as elites, but I think they at least deserve a 4th skill. So, if I were to give this character a 4th skill, keeping in mind that she is an attacker, I would have to say that I would almost want some additional buffs for her copy, or maybe like even a way for her to get more than one copy. Because, I mean, you know, Dupli-kate, her whole thing is that she can make a lot of copies of herself. So I definitely think that it should be something copy related, where maybe she can go beyond just the one. Maybe an additional skill that can create 1 copy of herself so that she could have a total of 2 copies, and maybe they have higher stats. I personally think that would be reasonable for her. It would also be a little more lore accurate. I just think that'd be cool. Next, we want to talk about Rexlode here, because for one thing, Rexlode is particularly important as he currently has a case file. Like, Dupli-kate is an inevitability, but Rexlode is current reality. He has a case file right now. So let's do a quick little rundown of what he does. He basically has an area effect attack that does damage over time. He increases his team's crit chance when fighting against invaders, which is not actually half bad when you consider that a lot of characters in the game now require crit chance. And then when an enemy receives a crit, which again, not too bad because a lot of characters crit nowadays, he can throw a bomb that can burn them and deal extra damage. So, like, honestly, his skills are pretty good. Like, if you really get down to the nitty-gritty and consider the fact that a lot of characters right now do revolve around crits, and that damage over time is a very effective ability, he's not bad. Also, the cherry bomb on top here scales aggressively. Starts out at 20%, goes all the way up to 115% with 50% extra base damage for 5 seconds. Like, that's pretty good scaling. So let's talk about what I would want from a 4th ability. Probably something that involves push. Something that involves push because he makes boom. Boom launches people. So I think a push ability would make sense for him. Maybe even add some extra damage if they're already burned. Maybe something along those lines where it enhances the burn or makes it last longer. Something like that to just kind of tie into his thematics of explosions. So that's what I would consider for that. I'm not going to worry about Black Samson, quite frankly, but let's move on to some other characters here. Now, Darkwing 2 is interesting. Darkwing 2 is very interesting. Let's see if I have a copy of him that I can take a look at for the sake of research. There we are. Perfect. This skill right here is considered an actually really good skill. When Darkwing performs a critical hit, his next basic attack deals damage to the intended target and 25% damage to a secondary target. But if you crank it all the way up to level 10, it does more damage to the intended target and 205% damage to a secondary target. If this was on anybody else that wasn't a rare, this character would be busted. Because literally, he would attack his intended target, and then effectively do double damage to a secondary target. I mean, like, y'all know how crazy that is, right? And not just me. Also, again, massive props for having some crazy scaling on rank up here. I mean, starting out at 25% and going to 205, yeah, that's a nice glow up. Everything else here is kind of meh, honestly. This ability is okay. When an enemy kills the human ally, he stuns the enemy that performed the kill. In this day and age, I can see how this would be useful, but hard to say. Now, if I were to give him a 4th skill, I might be stepping on Green Ghost toes a little bit, but I almost wonder if there is a way to make him have some kind of an invisibility effect, because being that he is Darkwing, aka clone of Batman, his whole thing is kind of moving in shadows, attacking silently, quickly, and not being retaliated against by the time the enemy realizes what's going on. So I feel like some kind of become invisible until you strike somebody. Like, okay, here's an idea. Like every 10 seconds or whatever, he becomes invisible, dives for the highest attack enemy, and strikes them, coming out and doing extra damage and coming out of invincibility. That's just a thought I had. I think that could give him a much needed glow up. Now, the almighty fish. In a real twist of fate, Aquarius is already getting some actually decent usage in GDA ops. And every now and then, depending on the restriction, like if it's a Guardians of the Globe restriction, original Guardians of the Globe, Aquarius gets a surprising amount of love. So, what he does here, his main ability can remove positive status effects. It's a pretty cheap one. Summons a water stream on each target enemy's position, so he will hit all enemies that are on the field to be hit, and he will remove status effects. There are a lot of positive status effects nowadays, so not too bad. Reduce negative effect duration for all allies by 3% for every original Guardians of the Globe on the team. That goes up to 6%. Nothing too crazy. If there was a skill that could use a rework, probably that one. Maybe make the percentage a little higher. Maybe even make it as high as 50%. That would make a difference. And then this one here uses a bubble shield to create a shield equal to the attack power, equal to 60% of his attack power on the ally with the least HP. Nice little defensive thing. But really his bread and butter is this, because shields apparently count as positive status effects. Aquarius can rinse shields off of your opponents, which is not half bad. So, if I were to recommend a 4th skill here, I think I would want another push skill. I've been a big fan of push lately. I'd say give him a push skill where, like, maybe he, again, maybe targets the enemy with the highest attack and does a good push, like really knocking them to the back of the field and maybe even decreasing their attack. I hesitate to give him stun because stun can be really busted, but at least knocking them back a bit just to make it easier for your allies to not be destroyed. That's just a thought I had. Now, from World Beyond, we have 2. There is Damien Darkblood and Flaxen Leader. The thing with Flaxen Leader is I actually don't think he needs a rework because he exists for one purpose, and it's this, Invading Force, where he increases the resources you get from GDA ops if he's fighting against humans. That's it. That's the only reason he exists. That's the only reason he needs to exist. You can leave him alone. But Damien Darkblood, on the other hand, we've talked about him before. I even cranked him up on the tier list a teensy-weensy little bit. On a good day, with some noteworthy investment, he can do some crazy stuff. Like, he kept a Not of This Earth team alive against my noteworthy arena team and beat me, even though I had the stat advantage. Like, this ability right here, he gained some nice stuff. Like, when an enemy dies, Darkblood heals any member of Not of This Earth 50% of max HP at max level. Starts out at 5%. Not bad healing. Not bad at all. And then this ability right here is kind of what I envisioned for Darkwing, where he becomes invisible and goes to the target and then silences them and deals damage. That's an ability that I think would make more sense on Darkwing, if I'm being quite frank, but it's an ability that he has. Also, maybe questionable name. Gives me a giggle that is immature, but never mind. So I guess as a fourth skill, I would kind of want them to lean into his support effects a bit. Like maybe some kind of skill where he can steal buffs and distribute them to his allies, kind of like something in line with his detectiveness. That one's a little bit of a work in progress in my brain, but I just personally think something to do with researching enemies' buffs, taking them and distributing them to his allies would make sense too. Now, criminals. The criminal one is interesting because we did just get multi-pol here, so we're not going to worry too much about him because regardless of how good he actually is, he is recent enough to where his skills are a little bit more in tune with the current game. But regardless, I digress. Kursk and Magmaniac are both rare characters that are ranged, and ranged characters can actually do pretty dang good in GTA Ops. For Magmaniac here, he can apply burn damage, which is never a bad thing. When married to the mob, he reduces the enemy's max HP. That one is interesting because it basically does soften up the enemy a little bit. I can't help but wonder if there is a world where that could be useful. And then he has more damage against stunned enemies. There's a lot of stuff nowadays that can stun, so the fact that this ability does prioritize stunned enemies makes it noteworthy. If I were to give him a fourth ability, I would give him an ability where he actually can stun. That way it synergizes with this ready, aim, fire, and he doesn't have to completely rely on another character. Maybe like something where every 20 seconds or even every 10 seconds, when an enemy's burn expires, like from this, when an enemy's burn expires, they end up stunned for a few seconds. Something like that. I personally think that was synergized well with him. Plus, of course, we have Kursk, the Lightning Man. When he casts an ability, deals 400% base damage per second for 2 seconds, and then applying damage reduction. This ability here, when fighting against Guardians of the Globe, he increases his team's damage over time by 5%. Could work really well with Magmaniac, just saying. And then his Electrical Storm ability generates electricity with rays emitting from it to deal damage. Nothing too crazy there. Again, synergizing Magmaniac, I think his fourth skill should be stun. It's a little crazy that he's an electric character that doesn't have a stun effect, as that's like a law of gaming. When you're an electric type character, like you're a Pokemon or something, you paralyze, you stun. That's what you do. So it kind of blows my mind a little bit that he doesn't have a lot of that. So I think a fourth ability should be something that aggressively synergizes with Magmaniac and can stun. So that's just my thoughts. Personally, like I said, especially with the fact that rare character case files are now a reality, I think rare characters could use just a little bit of a glow up. A fourth skill at least, and maybe even some buffs to their abilities. The thing with rare characters is that they will never have the stats of other characters, but at the very least they could receive a little bit of love, which is just my opinion. But we are going to leave it at that. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Are there some rare characters that you use that could really use some love, or am I just going crazy here? Let me know, and we shall see you next time. Have a good one.